There is someone who cannot stop thinking about you, yet this connection feels like something that should never happen. And that reality points to two powerful truths you need to understand today. Before continuing, pause for a moment and take a slow breath. The fact that you are hearing these words right now is not as random as it may seem. Think about the person who immediately appeared in your mind, the one whose presence keeps returning to your thoughts even when you are focused on other things. There is a reason they surfaced. Somewhere in your life, there is a person who feels an unusually strong connection toward you. This is not a simple attraction. It is not a temporary fascination that comes and goes. What they feel runs much deeper than that. The bond is steady, persistent, and always present beneath the surface. They are deeply drawn to you, but not in a way that is dramatic or obvious. Instead, their feelings live in silence. They carry them quietly, keeping them under control, even though those emotions are stronger than anything they expected to experience. Yet at the same time, this connection feels restricted. It feels as if an invisible barrier stands between what exists and what could be. The obstacle is not the absence of affection. The obstacle is something else entirely. And that is where the two important meanings behind this situation begin to reveal themselves. They explain why the connection feels impossible to ignore. They explain the distance. They explain why moving on seems difficult for either of you. Welcome to Jungian wisdom. The first thing you need to recognize is that a restricted connection is not necessarily a weak one. In many cases, the exact opposite is true. Relationships that feel forbidden rarely begin from boredom, convenience, or loneliness. They do not usually emerge from a passing crush or a fleeting curiosity. Instead, they often grow from a deep sense of recognition. This person did not consciously decide to develop these feelings for you. The process happened gradually. At first, you were simply someone they noticed. Then you became someone they admired. Later, you became someone they trusted, and before they fully understood what was happening, you had become someone who occupied their thoughts far more often than they wanted to admit. The reason the connection feels forbidden has little to do with the feelings themselves. More often, it is about circumstances. It may involve timing, responsibilities, commitments, fear, personal values, family expectations, social pressures, cultural beliefs, moral boundaries. Whatever the reason, something stands between desire and action. This leads directly to the first truth. That person is engaged in an ongoing struggle within themselves. They are not fighting against you. They are fighting against what they feel. Every day begins with thoughts of you appearing in their mind, followed immediately by reminders of why they should push those thoughts away. They replay conversations and moments you shared, then criticize themselves for enjoying those memories. They imagine being close to you, then quickly force themselves to focus on something else. The fear is not coming from their heart. The fear comes from what those feelings could mean for the life they currently know. For some people, there may already be another relationship involved. For others, there may be expectations from family, traditions, social circles, or personal principles that feel impossible to ignore. Sometimes one person is simply unavailable. Sometimes the connection challenges everything they believed they wanted. So they remain still. Instead of expressing themselves, they retreat. Instead of reaching toward you, they create distance. Instead of speaking honestly, they remain silent and observe from afar. But silence should never be mistaken for indifference. Very often, silence exists because emotions have become overwhelming. This person is not unaffected by you. Quite the opposite. Their feelings are so intense that speaking them aloud feels dangerous. Opening that door would force them to confront realities they may not feel ready to face. Taking action could create consequences they are uncertain how to handle. Moving closer could expose truths they have spent a long time avoiding. As Carl Jung observed, whatever is resisted often gains strength. That pattern is unfolding here. Each attempt to suppress these emotions only drives them deeper. Every effort to ignore the connection makes it feel more significant. Every denial reinforces the bond instead of weakening it. Emotions that remain buried do not simply disappear. They wait. they gather energy. They continue influencing thoughts and behavior from beneath the surface. This may explain why you sometimes sense their presence unexpectedly, why thoughts of them arrive without warning, why certain emotions seem to appear for no obvious reason, why the connection feels unfinished even during periods of silence. Unspoken feelings do not vanish. They remain suspended between what has been experienced and what has never been expressed. Jung taught that until hidden aspects of ourselves become conscious, they continue directing our lives from the shadows. Much of what exists between you and this person remains hidden. It remains unnamed, unresolved. And because it has not yet been brought fully into awareness, it continues creating emotional tension beneath the surface. This person carries thoughts of you privately. In public, they may appear composed and completely in control. Internally, however, they are moving between opposing forces. One part of them wants to move closer. Another part immediately pulls back. One moment, they imagine possibilities. The next moment, they convince themselves those possibilities should remain untouched. This conflict does not happen because you mean little to them. It happens because you mean far too much. They worry about disrupting lives. They worry about crossing lines they value. They worry about beginning something that could transform everything. Living with that conflict becomes exhausting. That exhaustion is part of the reason the connection sometimes feels heavy. It explains why distance fails to create relief. It explains why silence can feel surprisingly intense. Jung also compared human encounters to the interaction of two chemicals. When a true reaction occurs, both elements are changed. That is exactly what has happened here. Whether either of you fully recognizes it or not, the encounter has altered both of you. Something shifted the moment this connection entered your lives. This is not simply imagination. It is not an accident. It is not something that can easily be explained through logic alone. And that is why time has not erased it. The connection survives because it carries meaning. It is sustained by significance rather than habit. Jung also suggested that where genuine love exists, the need for power fades. That is part of what makes this situation so confusing. Neither person is trying to win. Neither person is trying to control. There are no games being played, no calculated strategies. Only two people affected by something unexpected, trying to understand how it fits into the reality of their everyday lives. And through all of this, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. You were never a distraction. You were never an error. You became a meaningful chapter in a story that neither of you anticipated, yet neither of you has been able to completely leave behind. You are not someone who can simply be forgotten or exchanged for another person. Whether either of you fully realizes it or not, you have become part of a journey that is already transforming both lives. The deeper this understanding grows, the more the purpose of this unusual connection reveals itself. It unfolds gradually, one layer at a time, patiently exposing truths that were hidden before. As that realization settles in, another fact becomes difficult to ignore. This connection does not behave like ordinary attraction. Distance does not weaken it. Reasoning with it does not dissolve it. Convenience does not determine its strength. Instead, it continues moving quietly beneath the surface, following both of you wherever life goes. You may notice that even during your busiest moments, when your attention is focused elsewhere, thoughts of this person unexpectedly return. Not because you are deliberately holding on, but because something unresolved keeps asking to be acknowledged. The same process is happening within them. From the outside, they may appear completely unaffected. They may seem absorbed in their responsibilities, their work, their family, and the routines that fill their days. Yet the human mind has a tendency to revisit what remains unfinished. They remember how natural it felt to be understood by you. They remember conversations that flowed without effort. They remember the sense of familiarity that seemed impossible to explain, as if they had known you far longer than they actually had. Certain moments continue replaying in their thoughts because those moments carried a significance neither of you expected, and that is precisely what unsettles them. Once someone truly sees you beneath the surface, you cannot pretend that experience never happened. Once you have felt that level of recognition, there is no easy way to return to who you were before. This is where many people misunderstand these kinds of connections. They assume distance means a lack of care. Often, the reality is exactly the opposite. Distance is not always created because feelings are absent. Sometimes it is created because the feelings are too powerful. This person senses that crossing a certain line emotionally would change them in ways they cannot undo. Some part of them knows that honesty would set larger changes into motion, and although they feel the pull toward that truth, they may not yet be ready to dismantle the life they have spent years building, even when that life no longer feels completely aligned with who they are becoming. So they choose control, they choose stability, they choose the certainty of what they already know rather than stepping into something unpredictable. Yet every choice carries a cost. Suppressing emotions does not erase them. It simply changes the form they take. The feelings may emerge as restlessness. They may appear as distraction, dissatisfaction, or a lingering sense that something important is missing. They may begin questioning relationships that once felt secure. They may wonder why old answers no longer satisfy them. They may notice a growing emptiness where certainty once existed. Even if they never speak your name, you quietly become a reference point in their mind. Without realizing it, they compare their current reality to the emotional truth they experienced with you. You represent a possibility they have not yet allowed themselves to fully explore. That is one reason this connection feels unfinished. It is not merely about attraction between two people. It is about transformation. It is about two lives standing near the edge of personal change. And if you are honest with yourself, you have likely felt this too. Perhaps after meeting them, your expectations shifted. Perhaps what once seemed acceptable no longer feels enough. You may have become less willing to settle for surface-level relationships, less willing to invest in connections lacking emotional depth, more aware of what genuine understanding feels like, more aware of what true presence looks like. That awareness did not appear by accident, it came through recognition. And this is where the second meaning behind the connection begins to emerge. The purpose of this bond is not only about desire, it is about awakening. Some people enter our lives to build a future alongside us. Others arrive to awaken something sleeping within us. This connection belongs first to that second category. That does not mean it can never become more. It simply means its first purpose is internal. You encountered this person at a time when something inside you was ready to evolve. Likewise, they met you during a period when deeper questions were already beginning to form beneath the surface of their life, whether they admitted those questions or not. That is why the attraction feels both powerful and confusing. You reflect hidden aspects of each other. You reveal things they have kept buried. They reveal parts of yourself that were waiting to be recognized. Connections like this rarely follow ordinary timelines. They move differently, they work quietly. Rather than demanding immediate action, they slowly reshape your awareness. They influence your values, they change your priorities. They alter the way you see yourself and the world around you. That is why even silence can feel alive, because the process continues even when nothing appears to be happening. Something deeper remains at work beneath the visible surface. You may wonder why moving on feels so difficult, why logic alone cannot resolve the feeling, why repeatedly telling yourself that nothing can happen fails to create freedom. The reason is simple. The connection is not surviving because of fantasy. It survives because it touched something true, and truth has a way of remaining with us. What you are holding on to is not only a person. You are holding on to an experience that revealed a deeper level of emotional clarity within yourself. An experience that changed the way you understand connection. And whether they acknowledge it openly or not, they are carrying the same experience. This does not mean your life should pause. It does not mean waiting endlessly for someone. It does not mean sacrificing the present for uncertain possibilities. What it does mean is understanding the lesson this connection is offering. It is showing you how deeply you are capable of feeling. It is teaching you what genuine emotional depth looks like. It is revealing the difference between a connection that nourishes your spirit and one that merely fills time. It reminds you that some experiences reach beyond comfort, convenience, and safety. And in its own way, it is teaching them exactly the same lesson. What comes next cannot be controlled. It cannot be rushed, manipulated, or forced into existence. The future of this connection will unfold according to the choices, awareness, and growth of the people involved. For now, the most important thing is not predicting the outcome. The most important thing is understanding why the connection appeared in the first place. Because once you understand that, you begin seeing that its greatest purpose may not be to give you answers immediately. Its purpose may be to change you into the person capable of receiving those answers when the time is right. Each individual must make that choice for themselves. No amount of love can make another person ready before they are willing to face what lives inside them. No amount of patience can complete a journey that someone else refuses to begin. And no amount of understanding can substitute for personal courage. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because the heart naturally wants to help. It wants to explain. It wants to reach across the distance and somehow ease the struggle for the other person. But growth does not work that way. The lessons that transform a life are rarely taught from the outside. They are discovered from within. Every person eventually reaches moments where they must decide whether they will continue living according to old fears or step into a deeper level of honesty. No one else can make that decision for them. That is why your energy is better invested in your own path. Not because the connection is unimportant, not because your feelings are invalid, but because your life deserves your full presence. For too long, many people become trapped in the belief that fulfillment exists somewhere outside of themselves. They believe happiness is waiting for a text message, a conversation, a confession, or a future event that will finally provide certainty. Yet certainty rarely arrives in the form we imagine. Often, it arrives through self-understanding. It arrives when you realize that your peace was never meant to depend entirely on another person's choices. It arrives when you understand that your value remains intact regardless of whether someone else recognizes it. It arrives when you stop measuring your worth by someone else's readiness. That realization changes everything. Because once you understand your own value, you stop approaching love from a place of lack. You no longer seek someone to complete you. You seek someone who can walk beside you while both of you remain whole. That distinction may seem small, but it changes the entire experience of connection. When people seek relationships to fill an emptiness, fear often becomes the foundation. Fear of losing, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. But when a person understands their own worth, love begins to emerge from a different place. A place of choice rather than desperation, a place of authenticity rather than attachment, a place of mutual respect rather than dependency. This connection has been guiding you toward that understanding, even during the moments that felt painful. Some lessons arrive gently, others arrive through contrast. Sometimes we discover what truly matters because something awakens us so deeply that we can no longer settle for what once seemed acceptable. You may notice that your standards have changed, not in a superficial way, not because you have become demanding, but because you now understand what genuine emotional presence feels like. You understand the importance of honesty. You understand the value of emotional depth. You understand that real connection involves more than convenience, attraction, or temporary excitement. And because you understand those things now, returning to old patterns becomes increasingly difficult. This is part of your evolution. You are not the same person you were before this experience began. The way you view relationships has changed. The way you view yourself has changed. The way you understand emotional truth has changed. Growth often happens so gradually that we fail to recognize it while it is occurring. Only later do we look back and realize how much has transformed. One day you may reflect on this period of your life and see it differently than you do now. What currently feels uncertain may eventually reveal itself as necessary. What feels confusing may later appear incredibly clear. What feels unfinished may reveal itself as a chapter that prepared you for everything that followed. Life has a remarkable way of connecting experiences that initially seem unrelated. Moments that once felt random eventually reveal their purpose. Encounters that once seemed complicated eventually make sense. Lessons that once felt difficult eventually become wisdom. This connection is no exception. Whether it leads to union, distance, friendship, or separate paths entirely, it has already left an imprint on both lives. Certain people enter our journey not simply to remain forever, but to awaken something important within us. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they leave, but the awakening remains, and that awakening becomes part of who we are. Perhaps that is why some connections continue to feel significant even when physical distance exists. Their influence extends beyond ordinary circumstances. They become part of our personal story, part of our growth, part of our understanding of ourselves, not because they were perfect, not because they provided every answer, but because they helped us ask better questions. Questions that led us closer to our truth. Questions that encouraged deeper self-awareness. Questions that challenged us to become more authentic. The deeper purpose of meaningful connections is not always possession. Sometimes it is transformation. Sometimes it is expansion. Sometimes it is the quiet awakening of parts of ourselves that had been sleeping for years. And once awakened, those parts cannot easily return to sleep. That is why there is no need to fear the outcome. The outcome will reveal itself in time. What belongs in your life will move toward alignment. What does not belong will eventually move away. Either way, clarity arrives, not through force, not through obsession, not through endless analysis, but through the natural unfolding of truth. Truth has a way of emerging regardless of how long it remains hidden. People reveal themselves through consistency. Choices reveal priorities, actions reveal intentions, time reveals reality, and reality is always stronger than fantasy. This understanding allows you to relax your grip on the future. You do not need to predict every possibility. You do not need to control every outcome. You do not need to solve every mystery before it unfolds. Life is asking for something simpler. Trust. Trust in your own growth. Trust in your ability to navigate whatever comes next. Trust that you will recognize what is right for you when it appears. Trust that your path continues forward regardless of anyone else's decisions. Because it does. Your future is not standing still. Your life is not waiting in a paused state. Your story continues to unfold every day. New opportunities continue to emerge. New experiences continue to shape you. New lessons continue to strengthen you, and new possibilities continue to exist beyond what you can currently see. The connection may remain important. It may continue occupying a meaningful place within your heart, but it no longer needs to occupy the center of your existence. You can appreciate what it has taught you while continuing to live fully. You can honor the significance of the experience without becoming imprisoned by it. You can acknowledge your feelings without allowing them to define your entire identity. That balance is where freedom begins. It is where longing transforms into understanding. It is where uncertainty transforms into trust. It is where attachment transforms into wisdom. And from that place, something beautiful happens. You stop looking at the connection through the lens of fear. You stop asking whether you are enough. You stop wondering whether you somehow caused the distance. You stop carrying responsibilities that never belonged to you. Instead, you begin standing in truth. You recognize that what is real does not require constant pursuit. You recognize that authenticity cannot be manufactured. You recognize that meaningful relationships are built through mutual courage, mutual honesty, and mutual willingness, not through one person carrying the entire emotional weight. That understanding brings peace, a quiet, steady peace that does not depend on immediate answers, a peace rooted in self-respect, a peace rooted in clarity, a peace rooted in the knowledge that no meaningful experience is ever wasted. Everything has contributed to your growth. Everything has expanded your awareness. Everything has brought you closer to understanding who you truly are. And perhaps that has been the deeper purpose all along, not simply to bring two people together, but to bring each person closer to themselves. Because when people finally learn who they truly are beneath fear, beneath expectation, beneath old conditioning and outdated beliefs, they become capable of something extraordinary. They become capable of living authentically. And authentic living is where every meaningful relationship begins. Whether together or apart, whether now or later, whether the story continues or ends here, that truth remains. What has awakened within you is real. What you have learned is real. The growth is real. The transformation is real. And no matter what happens next, that can never be taken away.